Hey guys, Malicious here, and today I'm back for another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. I remember covering this way back in the Reddit project that I did, but it's fun. This subreddit is a fun one to come back to and look at more stories. Speaking of stories, I have 3 lined up for today. Let's get into the first one. I want a doctor to place my IV. I know IV is not shouted. I know it's like stands for intravenous, but I just wanted to shout it. This story takes place a few years back when I was doing a clinical rotation for phlebotomy for my degree in medical laboratory science. I was placed in the ED, emergency department, of a local hospital, practicing poking patients and drawing their blood. All the staff knew that my snow white scrubs meant I was a student, but some patients took them to mean I was a physician. One night I happened to walk by an exam room when altercation was taking place between a patient I will call Mr. Smith and a very patient RN, a registered nurse. Altercations were a fairly common occurrence in the ED, but I was still pretty green to it, so it was hard not to stop and listen in. I've been doing this for 30 years, Mr. Smith. I can assure you, I don't care how long you've been doing this. I want a doctor to place my IV. Mr. Smith, if you please hold still, I promise I'll have it in a flash. You'll hardly feel a thing. Are you deaf or just stupid? At this point, the man catches sight of me loitering in the hallway. I want her to place my IV. Me, flabbergasted. But I can't thread IVs. I only know how to draw blood. Sir, she's just a student. This affront seemed to put the patient into overdrive, and he began slamming his fist onto the bed rail, screaming for a doctor. The nurse quietly took me aside and asked me to go fetch one of the physicians on duty. I ran to get the kindest one. I was afraid of getting snapped at by the other doctors working that night. I'll call them Dr. Anderson. Oh. I get what you're doing here. Mr. Anderson patiently listened to my explanation, worsley grabbed an IV kit out of the cupboard, and followed me to the patient's room. We could hear the patient still throwing his tantrum as we walked down the hall. As soon as Dr. Anderson stepped into the room, in his white coat, the patient switched it off like a light and breathed us a heavy sigh of relief. Finally, with a smug smile at his nurse. Mr. Anderson, with a big friendly smile. Hello, Mr. Smith. I heard you want a doctor to place your IV. Well, I haven't done this since medical school, so that's, 25 years ago now? I might be a little rusty, but I'm happy to give it a shot. Nurse, will you position the patient's head? I'm going for the jugular. Suddenly, the patient decided he didn't want a doctor to place his IV after all, and the nurse with 30 years experience placing IVs would do just fine. TLDR, ED patient insists on having a doctor place his IV. Patient gets a doctor, and then realizes he doesn't want a doctor after all. See what happens when you complain enough? You get exactly what you want, except you don't want it because they could kill you. Yell at me for delivering. Well, time to get some exercise. Some years ago, I was driving pickups and deliveries at P&D for a trucking company in Denmark. P&D is the part of transport chain where you usually deliver small quantities to multiple customers on a route. Kind of like UPS or FedEx, but in semi or rigid box trucks. It was nearing the end of the day and I had to deliver a trampoline to a residential area. Mind you, this is in the EU, so things may be a bit different than in the US regarding rules and regulations. It was a fairly new area with plenty of space, but I had to reverse in because there was no way of turning around. But no problem, the road was wide, so were the corners I had to go around. I put my semi in reverse and started going backwards. And of course, I was delivered to the last house on the street. Now the road climbed a bit and was about 600 or 700 meters long. That's quite a range, apparently. But it all went fine. When I finally got to the end of the road, I got out of my truck to unload this trampoline. Some guy was already standing behind my truck and started yelling and swearing at me. I was the biggest idiot on this earth. How the hell could I think of going in there with a semi? I could have run over all the kids in the neighborhood. No one was out. I had absolutely no valid reason for being there and could get the hell out of there right away. Instead of starting an argument with the person, I calmly asked him where he lived. He pointed at the house and said, number 74. And lo and behold, where was I delivering? You guessed it, number 74. So I, again very calmly, told this man, in that case, I have a trampoline for you. Oh, the man said, well, I'd like it if you could, but, I interrupted, since I have no business being in here with a semi, I'll be waiting for you at the end of the road. Pointed to the direction I just came from. Mind you, this is the big model weighing about 130 pounds, so you might want to bring a wheelbarrow. The joy was seeing him cutting all the way down the road with his wheelbarrow, and then trying to get this 130 pound trampoline up in the wheelbarrow and started his long heavy walk 700 meters up to his house again. Priceless! It just, yeah, you're gonna yell at me for trying to actually be nice and get a delivery to you? Okay, I'll be back down the bottom waiting for you to bring a wheelbarrow. And you get to drag it yourself. I would laugh if at one point it fell off and just started rolling down the hill. It's just like, boss says I have to scan packages before I load them, then gets mad when I refuse to load unscanned packages. Hello everyone, nice to meet you. I'm very new to writing on this subreddit, so I hope I'm doing this right. I didn't even realize this was malicious compliance until recently. Note, I will of course be changing names for privacy. First things first, a little backstory. I work as a package handler for a large hub faculty of a well-known shipping company, spending my days loading residential delivery trucks. The packages came with special barcodes on the side, as well as small spot labels that allow someone to see the address and which truck they go on. We used to have small scanners that would scan the barcodes in order to ensure we didn't put the packages on the wrong trucks or get a package that didn't belong, as sometimes the labels could be lost or a package could get the wrong spot label. The trucks were even fitted with a small door side sensor, so if you scan a package and try to walk into a truck where it doesn't belong, the scanner would start to whine. Now, let's move on to our main antagonist in the story, Alan, my former supervisor. Alan is a short, skinny guy with a thin mustache and is a micromanager of the highest degree. He always walked up and down the trucks to watch us work, always watched us from a distance or close by with his arms crossed to get us to work faster. Always constantly told us to grab all our packages as they came to us, despite the fact they go around on a moving conveyor belt that literally loops them back if we miss them. Always told us to load up our larger packages as soon as we get them, even though it makes it harder to move through the trucks, place other packages on the shelves, and had a tendency to hop onto a worker's trucks to move packages around the right way. His way. Basically the dumb way. I can go on and on and on and on and on. Sorry about Alen. But today I'm here to vent about one of these events, or we would be here all day. So anyways, Alen had me and all the other package handlers of our area in a group texting chat in order to tell us our start times for our next shift, as well as compare our work speeds to each other via our scanning count. I assume to make us feel bad and work harder, but we don't really care. Around that time, the number of packages we missed loading onto our trucks, as we call it, had increased, and ever since Alen had been adding to his group messages that we need to scan every package, make sure we were aiming for 0 misloads. Annoying, but nothing too serious. At least I thought. On to the actual story portion. So, one day I'm working on the belt as usual, and my scanner suddenly decides to screw up on me as they tend to do if smacked or if the battery comes loose. I go to Alen and ask him if he could help me fix it or give me a new one to use. Instead he takes it and tells me to keep loading my trucks without the scanner and just use the labels on the packages. This isn't really allowed, and instead I chose to stack the packages in front of the trucks so I can scan them once I get a new scanner. Alen eventually comes down and tells me just to load them onto the trucks normally and to stop stacking. Frustrating, but I shrug and do it to try to avoid any real conflict. That evening, Alan messages the group and lists our speeds with me at the bottom and is once again spouting on that we need to make sure we are scanning our packages before loading them, and even comes to talk to me the next day about my number of misloads. I'm angry, of course, as he is the one to tell me, but at that point I was still fairly new to the job and didn't feel comfortable arguing with the supervisor. So I just tried to continue on with my work with a mental note of always scanning my packages no matter what, so he can't pull this again, unaware that this will be my malicious compliance later on. Fast forward to a few months later, Alan is leaving for real estate and is training up one of the package handlers to be his replacement before he leaves. By that time, I am fed up with all the micromanaging and pestering, and can't wait for him to be gone. It's about the final week of his employment that I'm working the belt, and once again my scanner rigs up and stops working. I hand it over to Alan once again, and just like before, as if he never cares about scanning, he tells me to keep loading the trucks. I smile to myself and nod, so I continue stacking my packages in front of my trucks, waiting for that new scanner to arrive. Not long after, Alan comes back with the trainee at his side. He asks me what I'm doing, and I tell him I am stacking my packages. Once more, he tells me to keep loading my trucks, and this time I talk back, telling him I'm not loading them without a scanner. I have to admit, at this time, I was done with Alen and let my anger get the better of me, raise my voice and getting a bit shaky, as I have a very hard time dealing with anger, especially after dealing with his short for so long. The trainee tries to settle the situation and tells me to just keep stacking and they'll get a scanner right away, but is interrupted by Alen telling me once again to load my trucks, this time louder. I flatly respond no, and thus it goes back and forth for nearly a half minute before I eventually tell him to get it to me in writing because I'm not getting fired over this. Remember, we are not supposed to load a package without scanning it, and can indeed get in trouble if they can prove we assist it intentionally. This seems to get him even more mad, and he eventually tries to pull the head supervisor card. He asked me if I would like him to go to the head supervisor to try and intimidate me. I guess. I wasn't able to chuckle at my anger and just told him to go ahead and get him. Him and the trainee walk off with him storming down the belt. A few minutes later, the trainee comes back with a scanner in hand, apologizing and telling me to just get back to work. I didn't see Alen for the rest of the day, and if memory serves, the rest of his final week as well. Sorry if it's not as explosive as some of the other posts, but this was just my first real malicious compliance, and I hope you enjoyed the read all the same. And to any supervisors reading this, please just let us do our frickin' jobs. Anyways, links will be in the description to my main channel and the second channel for you guys to go check out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know next video comes out. A ding, ding. I'm the Mad Scientist. Mad Scientist out.